So, what happens when the man in charge of policing corporate Australia finds himself totally unprotected by the very system he's supposed to be leading? Today, we're getting into the explosive testimony of James Shipton, the former head of the regulator ASIC. He's breaking his silence on a system he says is fundamentally and dangerously broken. And that powerful idea, well, that's really at the heart of everything he's saying. It's an old military saying, basically meaning you can't just ignore unacceptable behavior. For Shipton, these words became deeply personal. After everything he went through, he decided he just couldn't walk past it anymore. All right, so let's talk about James Shipton. He ran ASIC, Australia's big corporate watchdog from 2018 to 2021. And now he's breaking a major code of silence. Friends and colleagues literally warned him that he could be professionally blacklisted for this, but he believes the risk is absolutely worth it to make sure no one else has to suffer the same way. His entire case really boils down to two major and very different ordeals. On the one hand, you've got this very public trial by media, and on the other, a private, internal battle. His argument is that in both cases, the institutions that should have had his back completely and utterly failed him. And he's clear, this isn't about revenge. It's a desperate plea for reform. So this first ordeal, it was a stunning, incredibly brazen public attack. I want you to just imagine this for a second. Your agency is investigating a powerful figure, and that same person starts taking out full-page ads in national newspapers to personally attack you, the regulator. I mean, that's exactly what happened to James Shipton. And the scale of this was just staggering. We're not talking about one or two ads here. We're talking about at least 43 prominent, just soul-destroying advertisements in major newspapers. Day after day, they were attacking his character, his competence, his integrity, everything. And this timeline, wow, it really shows the institutional paralysis he was up against. For 3 straight months, as these attacks just kept coming, he heard nothing. No support from his own agency, no support from the government. The only advice he got? A cabinet minister told him not to make a fuss. It took a full 5 months for ASIC to even start looking into it, and 6 months, long after he was already gone, before they finally sent a single letter to the newspaper. And this wasn't just some abstract professional problem. It had a devastating human cost. He talks about this one moment, standing in front of a newsstand, seeing his face on yet another one of these attack ads, and just completely breaking down. In his own words, that was when I wanted to end my life. This was a profound personal crisis, and he felt utterly, completely alone. But believe it or not, the public attacks were only half the story. At the exact same time, Shipton was fighting another battle, not against some external enemy, but from right inside his own organization. So Shipton says that for months on end, he had to endure what he calls very serious and relentless inappropriate behavior from a senior colleague. It took a terrible toll on him, but when he tried to actually do something about it, he made a bizarre discovery. He was completely powerless to stop it. And this right here, this is the absolute paradox at the center of his story. You look at his title, Chair of ASIC, the top cop for corporate Australia. But in reality, because of what he calls deficient governance structures, he had zero power to stop the behavior. He was the boss in name only. And look, it's not like he just sat there and took it. He formally, in writing, instructed the person to stop. When that didn't work, he wrote to the Treasury Secretary, not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. He had multiple conversations with senior officials, basically begging them to step in. And for months, nothing. Crickets. The behavior just continued, unchecked, making things worse and worse. Okay, so here's where it all comes together. The external ad campaign and the internal bullying, they weren't 2 separate problems. Shipton's whole point is that they were 2 symptoms of the exact same disease, a profound institutional failure to protect its own people. At the heart of this failure, he argues, is a major breach of workplace health and safety, or WHS law. And let's be clear, these aren't just guidelines or nice-to-haves. These are mandatory legal standards that every single employer has to meet to protect the mental and physical well-being of their staff. And when you lay the 2 situations side by side, you start to see this really disturbing pattern emerge. In both cases, he says the institutions delayed or just flat-out refused to protect him. In both cases, they failed to meet their basic legal safety duties. They did nothing to stop the harmful conduct, and they only finally took some kind of action long after he had already left his job. Which brings us right back to that core idea. While he was being torn apart from the outside and harassed on the inside, the very institutions that were supposed to protect him, They just walked past. But here's the thing. This testimony isn't just about detailing a failure. It's a direct, and I would say urgent, plea to fix a broken system so that nobody else has to go through what he did. He's proposing 4 key reforms. First, WHS laws have to be treated as non-negotiable, period. Second, ASIC's internal governance needs a complete overhaul to fix that powerlessness he experienced. This means making it crystal clear who is responsible for what, and crucially, making sure all commissioners can actually be held accountable for their actions. So, why does any of this matter? Because for Shipton, this is way bigger than his own personal story. It's a massive warning. He's arguing that without these kinds of real, meaningful changes, other public servants, other people in law enforcement are still incredibly vulnerable. The system, as it stands today, is just set up to fail again. And in the end, Shipton's story leaves us with this really, really unsettling question that goes far beyond one guy or one government agency. If the person at the very top of the ladder wasn't protected, then who is?